So now we're going to continue our game and start working on the bullet. So we need to make sure that our star 2 is selected with the blue border around it, so any code we add is actually happening for the star 2 sprite. And again, we need to start with an event so that when the green flag is clicked, our code will start working. So again, our bullet or star 2 sprite is quite large in comparison to our spaceship, so we need to change the size of that so it's a lot more small and reasonable. So under our looks, we want to set the size to 20%. And as this star only comes out when we shoot it by pressing the spacebar, we need to start it with it hidden. So now we need to add some code for when we actually hit space that it shoots the star. So under control, we're looking for an if block, and we need a sensing block to find a key pressed. So it's already defaulted to space, so if key space is pressed, then let's find a sound. We're going to play sound block. You can see here we've only got two sounds. We've got the meow, or we can record our own. So let's go and find a sound now that's appropriate for our song. So under the sounds tab, we're going to come down here and choose a sound from library, and we want to find the laser sound. So in this case, we're going to choose laser 2. So while we're in here, we can click on this little play button to preview it. So that sounds like a good one. Select that and press OK. Back in our scripts tab, we can come down here to this code now and change that to laser 2. So now when we shoot the star by pressing space, we don't just want one bullet to come out, we want several. So we're going to use some code under control which creates a clone of myself. So every time I hit space, it's going to clone the star. So by just having one sprite over here, we can actually have several copies of it. We also, while we're here, going to add a wait 1 second. So we don't want us to have a continuous stream. We want one bullet every 1 second. So now again, with our moving our spaceship left and right, we need to make sure we put this in a forever block so that this happens forever while the game is running. So we can drag that up under here so it's part of the same code. So let's test that out. Press the star block, hit space. Our sound is working, but we can't actually see that bullet yet because we've still got this hide block. So what we need to do now is, under our control, we've got some code here that says when I start as a clone. Let's drag it out. So we're going to add some code here that every time it starts as a clone, something happens. So under our motion, we're going to use the go to X and Y code so that when it starts as a clone, it's going to start in a certain position. So under our data, we're going to find our variables. So remember back on our spaceship here, forever while we're moving our spaceship, it's setting the variable Y position to where the spaceship actually is. It's also setting the X position to where the spaceship is. So in our star, we can now use these variables that have the data of the location of the spaceship stored and bring these down and put that in there. So go to X position. So the star is going to start in the correct orientation left or right on our stage. We also want to say where it's going to start in the Y position. Now, we don't actually want it to start where the spaceship is. We want to kind of have the star start a little bit in front of him, so it looks like it's shooting from the front. So we're going to use an operator and use the plus. We'll drag that into the Y. Back in our data, we'll choose the Y variable. Now we're going to say we want him to start at the Y position of the spaceship, but we're going to add on 20 more points of position, so it actually starts a little bit away from him. So now we need to add some code to actually make the star move upwards out of the spaceship. So before we can do that, we need to show the star. So under the looks, we get the show code, and so that when we hit space, the little star will appear. Under the motion, we're going to find a change Y block, and we want to change the Y by 8. So the next thing we need is a loop, so we're going to grab a forever loop, and when this star hits the edge of a screen, we don't want it to just sit there on the edge, we actually want it to disappear. So we'll grab a if statement, put that in there, and also a sensing code. So we're going to say if it's touching the edge, let's grab a touching block, changes to edge. So if the spaceship is touching edge, under control we want to delete this clone. So every time we shoot our star up and it hits the edge, we want it to delete. So now we've added a little bit more code to our star. We want to test this out to make sure that if there is any problems, we can solve it now before we add too much more code. So back in your workbook, we've got another test, test number 3, and the purpose of this test will be to test how the bullet works. Okay, so our expected result when the space is pressed from our code is that the bullet shoots and hits the edge of the screen and deletes itself. So let's see what happens. So back in Scratch, we're going to hit the green flag and we're going to hit space, and you can see there we have actually encountered a little issue where our bullet or our star is not moving forwards and not touching the edge of the screen and deleting. So the actual result is the bullet appears but does not move. And so what is the outcome and action required? What do we need to fix? Let's have a look at our code again. So we've got an issue here where we've got the change Y by 8, so it's changing the Y coordinate for our bullet by 8, but it's only happening once, it's not in our forever block. So what we need to do here is move the change Y by 8 block into the forever loop. So let's do that. Drag that forever loop away, we'll grab this change Y by 8 and we'll put that in that loop, drag that back up, hit the green flag to test again, and it's working exactly as we expected.